An investigation has cleared 2 Crusaders players of wrongdoing in separate incidents in South Africa. New Zealand Rugby launched the investigation in May after Richie Mo'unga was accused of spitting beer on a woman and George Bridge was reported to have made homophobic slurs. The investigation was conducted by lawyer Steph Dyberg. However, New Zealand Rugby has asked the Crusaders to urgently review their protocols for team post-match activity. Colin Mansbridge is the Crusaders Chief Executive and joins us now on the line. Good evening, Colin.
Good evening, Lisa. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So the allegations were unsubstantiated or not upheld. Can you just explain to me, could you definitively disprove them, or is this a matter of you don't know either way?
There was the investigation was undertaken independently of us by Steph and with New Zealand Rugby. The evidence and information that I had was passed over so they could do that independent of ourselves. I think, as you've seen from our statement, we've found that they couldn't be upheld, and or New Zealand Rugby have found that they couldn't be upheld, and but Richie has actually acknowledged that he'd been drinking on the night. And when he was approached by someone, he responded in a way that was poor and out of character for him.
I suppose what I'm asking you, though, Colin, was there insufficient information to know for sure, or do you definitively know that there was no bad behaviour on the part of your players?
So what we do know, Lisa, is that Richie acknowledged he'd been drinking on the night.
Yep.
He was approached by somebody and he didn't respond well with that approach. And it was out of character for him. We're really clear about that.
Okay, I want to move on to protocols shortly, but another thing people will want to know is, did you actually get to review, or Steph Dyberg, did she get to see the security video from McDonald's that was so talked about at the time?
So all of the actual investigation and all the details of it, it's part of an employment process, is the first thing. Steph's also... in terms of, she's an independent process and is keeping all of those details confidential to herself and anybody that she's been in dialogue with. I had some other evidence presented to me, which I was able to forward on to Steph, which she was able to consider in her investigation. But I personally haven't seen any videos.
And you don't know if she...
Sorry, I haven't seen the CCTV videos.
And do you know whether she saw the CCTV video and making her reaching her conclusions?
No, I'm not sure whether she did or didn't. As I said, it was confidential and independent, so I'm not sure whether she did or not.
Okay, so were these...
we did, sorry, Lisa, I did pass on other information, including some videos that have been sent to me. I passed those on to Steph.
Right.
But they weren't CCTV videos.
So then, were the allegations against George Bridge, were they false or vexatious? Because this makes a difference to how you formulate protocol, I would imagine. So were they false allegations?
Look, I'm not going to say they're false. I don't... There was a lot of stuff on social media, and one thing that's been really clear for me through this experience is, something starts on social media and then gets escalated. That was all passed over to Steph so she could do her investigation. What's clear to me is that from the information I had available to me, that I accept the player's version of events.
Okay, because it makes it difficult to establish future protocol, doesn't it? Because if they're false allegations, I mean, what can you do to protect your players from that?
So I think it's probably leading into these interactions, which we could, that's experience we can learn. So obviously, when we do a social event, the players are away for a week, 2 weeks at a time. We're not going to lock them up in their hotel rooms for that period of time and then just roll them out to play the match. They are humans, so and that will sometimes require them to have a social event. We make sure that there's certain protocols around, so the chaperones how much alcohol is available for consumption vis-a-vis food available and those sorts of things. It's very hard to have a quantitative process in place for that. Obviously, different people behave in different manners, so we've got to review that qualitatively. But when we've done all that, we want to make sure that when players are out, they're making good judgments. That's where I think the opportunity is.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. Do you think they made some poor judgments in the McDonald's incident? Because you did have security with them, didn't you, at the time, from memory, correct?
Yeah, look, I'm not
so you have
into the details.
I understand you don't want to get into the details of this specific case, but let's put it this way. Yeah. If your players are out and they've got security with them, I mean, what more can you do?
We can look. This is a challenge for players, high-profile, well-known players being out. It is a bit of a challenge, but this isn't a sort of a button you switch yes or no, in or out. It is a qualitative process, so we can make sure that we brief players better. We can make sure we brief security better. We can choose to go to different places. We can put more protocols in place in terms of the social event we have beforehand. They're the sorts of things that we can do, but it's never going to be sort of right or wrong, yes or no. It's always going to be a qualitative process that we'll have to evolve.
Okay.
And just get better each time.
So around the issue of alcohol, what's an acceptable level of alcohol to be consumed? Because Richie Mo'unga on his own social media said that he was obviously intoxicated and should have gone home earlier. So do players still having issues with alcohol?
So I think, Lisa, you and I will have widely different. I suspect we have widely different tolerances to alcohol, and the same with our players. You know, there are some players who will tolerate alcohol much differently than others, simply through size and physiological reasons. In this particular case, Richie has acknowledged he had been drinking on the night and responded in a slightly out of character way. But it's one of those things where, again, it's very hard to say, nobody should be allowed more than one glass of this or one thing of that.
So the easy thing you could do, Colin, is say no alcohol on tour, full stop. Are you looking at that?
That's right. So actually, so if you think about it being a scale, Lisa, from 0 to 10, we're probably talking about settings that, I don't know, let's say the number is 6, we should maybe dial back to 4.5. But I don't think we're going to propose...
So, Colin, just on the scale, 10 is wild drunk, is it? Is 10 wild drunk? Is that what we're talking here on your scale of 1 to 10?
No. I said if we did have a scale...
Right.
It's our settings probably require tweaking more than actually locking players up in a hotel for a week and then rolling them out to play a match.
But on the issue of alcohol, because alcohol more often than not seems to play a part in these situations, do you need to say no alcohol on tour, full stop? Are you considering that?
Well, actually, in short, we have considered it. But in the same way, we wouldn't say there is no alcohol in life. We're not going to say there's no alcohol on tour. Remember, these players are away maybe 2 weeks from families, and a moderate amount of alcohol in a social setting is a great opportunity for them to decompress in the same way that you might pop home this evening and have a glass of wine yourself.
So were you saying, when you say that you considered that...
Zero, sorry,
Colin, to interrupt.
Sorry, Lisa, what were you saying?
I was just saying, when you say you considered 0 alcohol on tour, do you mean following these...
No, I have personally, in examining our experience here, I have personally sat down and thought, how do what are your options? They are 0 to whatever they are. And obviously it would be the legitimate thing to do is to sit down and consider 0 as one of those options. Absolutely.
So do you think it's unreasonable to expect your players to go dry while on tour?
I think it's unreasonable to expect players to have to be treated in a non-human fashion. And I'm not so sure that actually locking them up in a room, serving them.
I'm not suggesting locking them up on a room. I'm just asking you, why not go without booze for a few weeks while you're on tour, and then maybe you wouldn't have a situation like this?
So there's an interesting way of describing it. Lisa, you said going out, no booze on tour. I don't know whether you have a glass of wine when you get home in the evenings and whether you would consider that booze or a glass of wine. I think, it's more that area where we would like to sort of set the dial versus excessive alcohol consumption.
Right.
Absolutely.
Do you accept that you're not at? Do you accept you're not at that point on the dial at the moment, though, with some of your players? You're not at that point on the dial if some of them are saying that they were obviously intoxicated.
We can get better. Absolutely. Yep.
Is part of the problem with banning alcohol that both you and the All Blacks are involved with breweries?
Absolutely not. In fact, the last meeting I've had with a senior executive of one of our sponsors, we spent most of the time discussing zero alcohol product that they promote, and we spent very little time talking about porridge and things like that. So I think that's not a factor in this situation at all.
We're out of time, Colin. Just before we go, how long before you expect that review of post-game protocols to be complete?
So we've been actually having that conversation basically from the moment the players arrived back from South Africa. We've been having it, and then New Zealand Rugby have written to me to say, you've got to do it thoroughly. But we've already probably had 5 to 10 meetings associated with that specific topic already.
Okay, appreciate your time this evening. That is Colin Mansbridge, who is the Crusaders' chief executive there.